everyone, I'm here in SketchUp and I'm going to show you how a cabinet is built, at least according to the way that my family built cabinets. Again, there's lots of ways that cabinets can get built, and this is just one way. If you remember in my previous video, we planned out the face of a cabinet, and so that's where I'm going to start in SketchUp. We're going to build the face, and then we're going to approach this the same way that a cabinet assembler would, so you can see how all the joinery and all the parts and pieces actually do get assembled. So the first step that we need to do is we need to cut our pieces of wood. Now we don't have saws in SketchUp, but we do have the push-pull tool. But we need to get measurements for all of our rails, our stiles, and our mullions. So let's go back to that CAD drawing to get those. And here is that lovely CAD drawing. I have the measure tool already activated because you can see with that big orange crosshair. And I'm going to put my crosshairs in the middle of this rail. And you can see that CAD is telling me that this rail is actually 2 foot 9 inches wide and 1.5 inches tall. Remember and keep in mind that all of these stiles, rails, and mullions are actually 1 inch thick. Now our stile, it looks to be 2 foot 6.5 inches long or high and 1.5 inches wide. And then this first mullion is 1 foot 9 by 3 inches. So that 1 foot 9 actually also represents the size of this hole. So we just have to remember that this rail is up 1 foot 9 inches from the bottom rail. And then the top rail is 5 inches from the bottom rail. And that also talks about how big the mullion actually is. It's 3 inches wide and 5 inches high. So that was a lot of numbers, but we're just going to go back into SketchUp and I'll make sure that you guys remember what those numbers are. Alright, so let's go ahead and get all our parts and pieces made for the face. We're going to start with the rail. The rail was 2 foot 9 inches wide, and then it's also 1 inch thick. So that's how we're going to start this. 2 foot 9 and 1 inch thick. I'm going to get the rectangle tool. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start drawing that rectangle. And down in the bottom right hand corner of your screen you should see where SketchUp lists dimensions. Go ahead and just start typing 2 apostrophe 9 quotation for 2 foot 9 inches, comma, space, 1 quotation, which stands for 1 inch, and hit enter on the keyboard. You should see that SketchUp went ahead and drew out that rail profile. Now it's our job to give it its height. The height of that rail was 1.5 inches. So push-pull tool, 1.5 quotation, enter, and there you have a rail that is 2 foot 9 inches long, 1.5 inches high, and 1 inch thick. Good job, everybody. We now need to make 3 copies of this rail because we have the bottom rail, the middle rail, and the top rail. Go ahead and triple click on this rail, start the move command, hold Control, click on the edge of that rail, let go of Control so that you can make a copy. And we're going to move this up, and while you're moving it up, type 1 foot 9 inches, and it should have placed that rail up 1 foot 9 inches. And we can always use the measuring tape tool just to verify that. So from corner to corner, oh, that looks like it's 1 foot 7.5. So that means that we need to move it up 1.5 more inches so that we can get a 1 foot 9 inch hole, just like our AutoCAD drawing says. So I'm going to use the move command, and we're going to move this up. Make sure that you're going up and not backwards. 1.5 inches, enter. And once again, let's just go ahead and verify that with the measuring tape tool. From the bottom corner to the top corner is now 1 foot 9 inches. Good job. So you have to remember that you always have to accommodate the actual height of the object that you're moving. Alright, so we have one more that was 5 inches high, or 5 inches above the top of this rail actually. So let's go ahead and use the move command again. Hold Control, Then click on the edge, let go of control, and you should have made a copy. So if we want a 5-inch hole in between these two rails, what number do we need to use? It should be 6.5 inches. So 6.5 inches, enter. And let's just verify that this little space in between the two rails is 5 inches. Measuring tape from corner to the corner below, and we do have 5 inches. So good job, everybody. We have the rails already designed. The next thing that I want to make is the stiles. So remember that the stiles were 1.5 inches wide, and they're also 2 foot 6.5 inches tall. But our profile down here on the bottom is going to be basically this profile right here. It's going to be 1.5 inches by 1 inches. So I'm going to take the rectangle tool. I'm going to make sure that I'm aligned with this rail down here at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and start the rectangle, and in dimensions I'm going to type 1.5 inches, comma 1 inches, enter. And there you can see the profile. It's matching kind of what we did down here below. And then we're going to use the push-pull tool to bring that up 2 foot 6.5 inches. And if we did this correctly, it should have aligned with the top up here, and it sure looks like it did. Yep, good job. That's one style. We do need another one, so let's go ahead and copy. So triple click on your object, that's what you want to move, then hit the move command. Hover your mouse where you want to click, but before you actually click, hold control, then click, let go of control, and then you've made a copy. We're just going to move this to the other side, try to get it to align on that red axis. Somewhere over there, it doesn't have to be placed perfect, but you're starting to see how this is all going to come together. We're going to go ahead and create the mullions later. It'll be easier once these are put together. But I just wanted to demonstrate to you guys, we're not going to necessarily do this, but I would like for you guys to get a little practice with joinery and how pieces of wood come together. Now if we were just to put glue here and here and then clamp these together, they won't stay put for very long. It's actually going to create a very weak joint. So you either need to do like a rabbet or a dowel. And what a dowel is you drill a hole into the side of this. So let me just demonstrate this. And I think you guys should follow along too, just so that you kind of understand how this works. I drew a diagonal so that I could find the center, and then I could draw a circle of approximately 0.25 inches, and that would give me a 1/2 inch diameter circle. Use the push-pull tool, and actually I'm going to get rid of those diagonal lines because I don't need them anymore and they'll just kind of complicate this. What a cabinet designer or assembler would do actually is to just drill a hole into the side of this. We're going to go in 0.75 inches. That creates a fairly deep hole, and then what happens is they put something that's called a dowel inside of this hole. So half of the dowel goes into this hole, and then what happens is you create another hole on this side, and the other half of the dowel that's sticking out can therefore go into this side, and then you glue them together and you clamp them together, and that creates a very strong bond. So again, let's measure this real quick. From the top of the circle up is 1/2 inches. So the center of that circle is also an additional 1/4 inch. So that means we're going to come down about 3/4 of an inch from the top to find the center of the circle. So I'm going to use the measuring tool. Come in here, we're going to click and drag it down 0.75, enter. And that is where the center will be for this. And there SketchUp will help you find the center with the circle. So I've got the center on the line. Go ahead and click to start the circle, and then it's a 0.25 inch radius, which gives us a 1/2 inch diameter. Go ahead and push pull this in 0.75 inches. The goal of drilling holes is so that you can get a wooden dowel to fit inside of the holes. So you would have to actually drill a hole here, as well as a hole here, but also subsequently you'd need one here, and then you'd have to repeat the same on both rail and stile on the other side. So there's lots of hole drilling happening on rails and stiles. But the idea, once again, just so that you can see it demonstrated, I'm going to draw just a little temporary line to help me draw the actual wooden dowel itself. So I'm going to use the circle tool, place it on the end. I'm going to hit the right arrow on my keyboard so that it forces the red circle to show instead of the blue. Click to start the circle. We're going to do about 0.25 inches. Now what would normally happen is the assembler would put glue into both of these holes. So the dowel itself is not actually going to fill the entire hole. It's going to come somewhat close, but not really, because you do need to make room for glue. So this wooden dowel, if this was 0.75 inches and 0.75 inches over here, then I'm probably going to do 0.5 on both sides of this circle to push pull it so that we get the right size. So push pull. I'm going to delete that line out of that circle just because that might screw some things up a little bit. Now we can use the push pull tool, push it towards us 0.5 inches, and then go to the other side and push it 0.5 inches, and that would be the approximate size of the wooden dowel. Now if I were to take this wooden dowel right now and put it into this hole, it actually gets stuck to the rail. So temporarily I'm going to triple click on this rail, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to make it a group. And that way when I go to put this wooden dowel in here, it's not going to like accidentally glue, and then I'll never be able to get the wooden dowel out. And that's just an inherent property of SketchUp. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to use the move command. Find the center of this circle. It can be kind of hard sometimes to get it to grab, but eventually you get it. And I'm going to find the center of this circle, and sometimes you have to like hover over the edge of the circle before you can actually find the center. A wooden dowel doesn't just sit like that. It actually kind of comes out a little bit. So again, we're going to move this out approximately 0.5 inches. That should leave 0.25 inches in the back for glue. And then what happens is once this is in place, again you put glue into this hole, and then you bring these two items together, and you kind of put some glue on the outside edges as well. And then you clamp them together and you leave them there for a couple hours so that the glue dries, and it's a special glue for woodworking. And then once it's clamped, it will secure much better than if you were to try to secure these just with glue and without the dowel. So these kind of joinery issues really help strengthen the bond between two pieces of wood that normally wouldn't be there. So again, that was just really basically a demonstration, but it might be good to go ahead and let's group each of these rails and stiles separately from each other. So I'm going to make this one a group. I'm going to make this one a group. That way if we need to move them around we can, and silly SketchUp won't accidentally catch everything. So triple click, right click, make a group, and let's do the stile as well. I would make you do every single drill mark, but I really don't think that we need to. I think I kind of got my point across as to how to join pieces of wood together. This is the way that my cabinet company did it. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go ahead and delete this wooden dowel, and we don't need it. So let's go ahead and pretend like we've doweled up all of these rails and we've drilled holes into all of these stiles, and all we're going to do is simply move this stile and join it to that face frame, to those rails, and then vice versa here. Move command and over. So there we've got the beginnings of our face. Now what happens usually is sometimes these pieces, they just need to be sanded down so that it looks nice and even. Sometimes the joints can get a little bit off, and so there's these really giant sanders that you can put frames through that will actually smooth out any extra glue or the joints so that they look nice and polished. So the next step is to do our mullions, and they are located in the center. And I thought it would just be easier for us to draw right on here. Even though these are now groups, we can still draw a rectangle on top of the group and make the mullion come up. So I'm going to go ahead and mark where the center of this cabinet is, just for reference purposes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a rectangle off, and then we're going to place it on top. It's a little bit easier to do it that way. So again, our mullion, if I start drawing a rectangle, make sure you get a blue rectangle, is 3 inches, comma, 1 inches, because it's 1 inch thick, enter. And then we're going to use the push-pull tool, and it should come up 1 foot 9 inches. Beautiful. Let's triple click on this. Let's make it a group by right-clicking and choosing Make Group. And then I'm going to use the move command, find the center of this little board, which should be pretty easy to do, and then align it to the center of your frame, and you should see that it went perfectly into that hole. We're going to do the same thing on the top. We're going to mark it first. Where is that center? I'm going to use the rectangle tool. This is also 3 inches. And 1 inches. This time we're going to push-pull it up 5 inches. Depending on where it ended up drawing, make sure that you triple click, make sure that you group it, and then make sure you move it. Sometimes it gets a little tricky and a little cranky. So I'm going to hit, let's see if I can get this. There we go. Maybe. Is it going? Oh, it's trying. Why is this being so picky? Get where you need to go. Alright, so there we have our face frame completely made. Again, what would happen here in the joints is a hole would be drilled, and you would have dowels inside of the mullion. This is a little trickier to make in person. You kind of start with a rail, and then you put the mullion on, and then you put the second rail, and then you put the 2 stiles on with the mullion, and then you finish with that very last rail right here. So assembling it can be a little tricky, but for the most part, this is what you're going to end up with.